Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of our guests today, including John Shannon, standing by, brought to you by Able Auctions, ableauctions.ca. Before we get to John, congratulations to Czech News Director Joe Perkins and his wife Mary. They are proud first-time parents. Maud Catherine Perkins arrived yesterday, 8 pounds, 11 ounces. And Joe says mom and daughter are doing great. They couldn't be happier. So congrats to Joe and Mary and Maud.
Yeah.
Of course, when I think Maud, I think B. Arthur. But we'll move on from that.
What show was that?
The show was called Maud.
Oh, yeah, Maud. I remember that. Yeah.
It was an All in the Family spinoff. Yeah. John Shannon knows all about that. NHL analyst, co-host of the Bob McCowan podcast. John, thanks for doing this, sir. I can tell by your reaction there. You remember Maud.
I remember Maud. Usually about this time, I'm giving Rick a hard time about something. But the name of the show was Maud, yes. I'll tell you what. I gotta commend Ryan. Ryan is now the king of conspiracy theories. He's the best.
Whoa!
When you're suggesting that Darnell Nurse is not going to play tonight, that is the ultimate, Ryan. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, do you enjoy? I do. Okay. Do you enjoy cranky athlete interviews because they're away from the norm?
Well, here's the thing. I think that first of all, they're human too. Mm-hmm. And secondly, I like athletes that actually want to have good questions. Mm-hmm. You know, Alexander Mogilny, who you guys knew well from his time in Vancouver and in Toronto and New Jersey, loved smart questions. I love smart questions. And you know, there's lots of times where the athletes challenge everybody to I'm prepared to answer, but give me a good question and I will answer it. And let's face it, game day in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you're trying to get a soundbite.
Yeah.
You're trying to get a soundbite. And Donnie, you've been in enough scrums, and so have you, Rick, that you just want the guy to talk. Mm-hmm. You don't really care what he says. You just want him to talk.
Yeah.
And Darnell wasn't going to play that game today.
The strange part is if you ask a bad question, sometimes you get a cranky response, and it ends up being a great clip for the rest of the day and everybody else in the media.
Well, that was Phil Kessel was famous for those too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Hey, John, yesterday Florida over the Rangers 3-2, series tied at 2, but let's focus on the team that lost. What is Alexis Lafreniere showing people in these playoffs?
Well, that he was worth being the first overall pick, albeit during COVID. Mm-hmm. And it teaches you have to be patient with players. You know, just because you're the first overall pick and at 18 years old you get into the National Hockey League doesn't mean you're going to be the be-all and the end-all. And the Rangers, for the first 3 years of his career, were very patient and understood that. And now it's paying dividends. And they're going to have to do the same thing now with Capo Caco, who has not been as near as influential as they thought he was going to be. You guys remember him from the World Junior in Vancouver.
Yeah. Oh, big time.
And Caco's still learning on that, or rather on that learning curve that Lafreniere is. And they have two really good players there. They just have to be patient with them.
New York and the Panthers are even, but the Rangers have been outshot and out-attempted by a large margin. Should they consider themselves lucky to be tied at 2?
Here's the thing for me, and I haven't heard it mentioned very often, but you know, during the regular season and even during the Carolina series, the driving forces other than Vincent Trocheck were Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, I don't think Kreider and Zibanejad have any points in this series yet, and I think that when you consider that their power play had not been very good until scoring last night. And Zibanejad and Kreider have not been effective offensively. To be 2-2, I think is a bonus for the Rangers. You know, and perhaps Kreider will wake up now, and perhaps Zibanejad will become more effective. And if that's the case, on home ice at MSG, the Rangers, I would expect, would go up 3-2.
Hey, John, Oilers, Dallas, let's get back to them. Obviously a must-win. You do not want to go to Dallas down 3-1. What do the Oilers got to do better here tonight?
Well, they can't panic in their own zone. I mean, offensively is not an issue. They've scored enough. They've had enough opportunities in the Dallas defensive zone. But, and this is the big problem that Darnell is facing and the rest of the defense is facing, and quite frankly, the whole team is facing, is they get into panic in their own zone at key times. And after that first period, that great first period in Game 3, they just melted. And panic set in, and they weren't able to clear the zone properly. Simple stuff, Rick. Guys, smart players, like Derek Ryan's a smart player, but if you watch a couple of times, Derek Ryan can't get the puck out of his own zone because he's trying too hard and doing things, chipping it out is not a bad thing in the playoffs. And I think that that's something that the coaching staff will probably be emphatic about it. Adding Corey Perry, I think, adds a little bit more grit for the club, and we'll have to see whether it's Fogle or McLeod going in because they don't want to lose all the speed. But at the same time, I think that they just need some veteran input for a guy like Corey Perry to play and be a factor just to calm things down a little bit in the defensive zone.
John, would it surprise you? We were kicking this around yesterday, but Rutherford making a big trade this summer. Look, we don't know what this team's going to look like. I mean, they got a ton of UFAs and RFAs, very important RFAs as well. If they don't get a bulk of these guys back, we can't even predict what it's going to be like here next year. Do you think there could be a big trade here? You see one written this summer?
I think this could be a trading summer across the league, Rick.
Oh, okay.
There are teams that have already spent the increase in salary cap to 87.5. Yep. There are teams that don't have first-round picks, and last I checked, I don't think the Canucks are.
Well, they don't got a second either.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so I again, lots of people have thought that this draft wasn't as deep as other drafts, so that's one of the reasons why the picks were traded off. But I think by the time we get to the Sphere in Vegas next month, we're going to see a lot of activity across the league, teams readjusting. The discussion in Carolina with the change from Don Waddell to Eric Tulsky, you have to wonder what kind of influence that will have. There is going to be a lot of movement, I think, this summer, not just free agency, but on the trade market for that simple reason. Everybody's adjusting to the new salary cap.
John, before we let you go, let's switch from hockey to basketball, if you don't mind. I know you brought up the subject on the Bob McCowan podcast, but what did Bill Walton, the late, great Bill Walton, who left us earlier this week, what did he do for basketball, both on the court and as a broadcaster?
Well, I tell you what, arguably the greatest college basketball player ever. Remember, he only played 3 years of college basketball, not 4, because he when you're a freshman, when he was a freshman, you didn't play on the varsity team. But he was so good and was the last exclamation mark in my mind on John Wooden's UCLA Bruins. The other thing that he did, even in that time, was he spoke out. He had an opinion. He was against the Vietnam War. He tried to fight racism. He did so many things as a 21 and 22 and a 23-year-old that were truly amazing. And that didn't change when he became a broadcaster. I think that he lived life to the fullest, but was always outspoken and always was trying to fight for the underdog. And so here, when we lose a guy like that at the age of 71, which is far too early, you reflect on what difference he made. And the other thing, Donnie, is like we liked him as a player at our age. And then there are 3 more generations of basketball fans that love Bill Walton for his eccentricities and how much fun he made the game. And that's so important. Sometimes we take ourselves far too seriously in this business, and Walton certainly didn't and had fun for it. And I think the viewers and the fans were better for it.
Well said, as always. Thanks for this, John. We'll talk to you next week. Appreciate it.
I'm going to, the conspiracy theory guy, let's see what else he can do the rest of the day. So.
Yeah. Well,
I think he's on the Cheech and Chong stuff, John.
Well, yeah, it is Vancouver. We'll see if Darnell draws in tonight.
Well, Darnell won't be talking to Ryan. I know that.
Or anybody else, apparently. Thanks, John.
Cheers.
And he's bang on about Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad.
Got to get going.
That was tough. I've done that before. Number 93 for the Rangers. 0 points for both players.
Yeah, but they're up against Barkov's line, and Donnie, the Barkov's line is not giving them anything.
Sure, but that's not
anything. They got to pick it up, though. You're right.
Okay, we have an open segment. We're going to talk about – I know you just love that moment, Ryan. It was like the greatest moment of your life, all right? I promise it'll never happen again. We'll talk Mike Yeo, update the poll question next. Donnie, the team on Check.